We are back, folks. Nick McVicker here with you. Garage Door Sports returns after a 1-week hiatus. We'll get into that. We got NBA All-Star Weekend talk, MLBPA news, and, oh yeah, there was this, thing called the Olympics going on. We'll get into all of that and more. This is Garage Door Sports.
Mic check. 1, 2, 3. We good to go? Let's do this.
That's right, folks. We are back. As mentioned, Nick McVicker here with you. Hanging out, keeping things busy. We got a lot to talk about today. And yes, I'm rolling solo today. Kyle's not feeling good. Irfan's a little busy. Haley is working the Olympics. We'll get into that and so much more. We got a packed show for you tonight. And I could go in many different directions to start this one. I could talk about the Super Bowl. Hey, congrats, Seahawks. Congrats, Haley, and all of your Seahawks friends, because you guys are the champions. We could get into the story that came out this morning with MLBPA executive Tony Clark resigning, and we will get into that. NBA All-Star Weekend also happened on the weekend. Shout out Dame Lillard, 3-time three-point shootout champion. Not in a row, but still. He had a great weekend. New format. Was it a success? We'll talk about that as well. But I'm going to start with the biggest story in the sports world right now, and that is the Olympics. And let's be honest, we live in Canada, which means that we are very, very much focused on the game on the ice that takes place with a stick and a puck. And that's because hockey is our native sport. So let's get into the hockey conversation, and we'll start with the men's side. And if you are a Canada fan, you were sweating a little bit this afternoon, or this morning actually. Canada sneaks past Czechia in a entertaining game to some extent, and also not an entertaining game all at the same time. Czechia looked pretty good. We know they're a good team. We know that their World Junior team is Canada's Achilles heel lately. So no shock here that it was a tight game. But after the I believe it was a 5-0 drubbing in game one of the tournament, I don't think anyone expected this to be as tight as it was. And I mean, you got to give Czechia credit. They played their part and they did a really good job. But in the end, Canada sneaks out. Now, was it a convincing win? Absolutely not. Took a Mitch Marner overtime goal to get the win. And we can start with the beginning of the game, which actually looked pretty good for Canada. Macklin Celebrini extends his point streak, gets another goal 3 minutes into the game. Awesome. Canada gives up a goal about 5 minutes later. Not so good. And from there, Crosby gets hurt, which we don't know the extent of that. John Cooper, the coach of the Canadiens, is hoping that the MRI that he's going to have is going to reveal positive news, but it did not look good if you watch him walking down the tunnel. So Canadians will hold their breath and hope and pray that their captain, their leader, will be okay for the semifinals and the finals. But Canada just wasn't very convincing in this game. Yeah, they have a lot of speed. I mean, McDavid was flying. One of the few guys consistently flying. But they also trailed twice in this one. They went down 2-1 after the David Pastrnak goal in the first period. Nate McKinnon gets the tying goal in the second. And then they give up a goal to Palat with about 8 minutes left to go. Just under 8 minutes left to go in the third. And I mean, we had people at work saying, oh, this is over. They're done. Game over. Thanks for playing. We're out of here. And it took Nick Suzuki, who with Brad Marchand returning to the lineup, there was actually talk about him potentially being the guy sitting in the press box watching. Instead, it was Sam Bennett who was not in this game, which was an interesting decision, and I'll jump back to that in a second. But Nick Suzuki has a great shift, goes 1-on-4, gets the puck in deep, wins it back, and then gets a beautiful tip and puts it between the legs of Lucas Dostal, who had a fantastic game as well, which that absolutely needs to be said. As a fan, this was a very, very stressful game because they didn't look great for good portions of this one. And we can talk about the team selection. Was that the reason that this team hasn't looked so great? We could talk about the injury to Crosby and how much that affected the players, because we're not dumb. Like, obviously it did. So yeah, it's tough. And I want to say that this might be good for the Canadians. You get a little bit of a test. You get pushed in your quarterfinal game. But the fact that they had to go to overtime against a team that they've already beaten in this tournament and beat handedly in the first game is a bit of a concern. And we look at championship teams in the past, and they were always built on defense. Like that Canada team in 2010, the Golden Goal team, they were a defense-first team. They didn't have a ton of goals. And then you follow that up with 2014, same idea. They didn't have a ton of goals. They were defense-first, and it worked. So now the question becomes, is this team playing all-out attack, which they have been. They were all-out attack in the first 3 games of this tournament. Is that going to come back to bite them as we get further and further into the medal rounds? Now, again, Mitch Marner plays hero. Awesome job. Nick Suzuki's big goal. And I mentioned Sam Bennett being scratched. I don't think that was the right decision. I know John Cooper's a very smart coach, and I know there would have been multiple conversations about what they needed in a game like this. But Sam Bennett is a big game player. Same with Sam Reinhart. And the biggest example of a big game player on this team is Crosby. He is the definition of big game player. So when he goes down, you're now asking a lot of McDavid and McKinnon, who, we'll be honest, hasn't looked great in this tournament. Yes, he's putting up points, and he's going to do that. But if we're talking about Nate McKinnon himself, this is not the best we've seen from him. And that's disappointing because he is a very, very good player. But Bennett is one of those guys where you can put him in the lineup, doesn't really matter where. First line through fourth line on this Canada team. And he's going to play his role. So the fact that he got pulled out to put Marchand back in was a bit of a surprise. Now, I don't necessarily know who I would have taken out because I've really liked the play of Seth Jarvis since he's been put into this lineup. And Nick Suzuki, for me, hasn't done enough bad to be pulled out. So I don't know who you pull, but Bennett is a guy that I would have had locked into this lineup because he is a physical player, he knows how to score big goals, and he played in some massive games over the last few years when it comes to his NHL team, the Florida Panthers. So I don't understand why he was taken out, and I'm not going to say that was the reason that it might have cost them the game, and it wasn't. And I don't think there's any one particular reason, unless you're going to try to pinpoint Sidney Crosby getting hurt as that one reason. But it was a bit of a head scratcher to me, unless he's hurt. And if that's the case, if he's dealing with a bit of an injury, then I get it. You were expected to win this game, everyone kind of expected you to win this game, except for maybe the Czechia team, because they were pretty adamant that they were going to win one against Canada. So we'll take it with a grain of salt. I'm not going to say that that was the case. But, yeah, I would say that was a bit of a surprise to me unless he was hurt. And there's a lot to be said about this game itself. I see Christian Bennett 3367 in the chat mentioning Bedard should have been on the team. Listen, probably, if we're going off of what his season has looked like. Of course, he had the injury at the end of December going into January, and beginning of December that carried into the end of December and the beginning of January. I think that played a big factor as to why he wasn't there. Now, we can have the conversation whether that's right or wrong, but I can understand if they were worried about the injury and how long it was going to last. Even if the Blackhawks assured them that he was going to be ready, that would be my only hesitation, because you don't want to put a player on this roster who's not 100% healthy. And yes, he came back. He should probably have been named and then replaced, but it's just a lot to work with, and they wanted to go with people that they were 100% sure were going to be there. And then in the end, two of them weren't. So we have two replacements already on this team. So Bedard being picked is a conversation. I have no problem saying that the way he was playing, he should have been on the team. But injuries are injuries, and I understand where Canada was coming from when they made that decision. Hockey Canada was coming from when they made that decision. So I want to get back to this game, and there was some interesting refereeing in this one. And there's been a lot of talk about the referees within the tournament, and I will say that it has been sort of a weird tournament. They have a IIHF ref paired with a NHL ref, because they're using a mixed rule book where they're basically the exact same, but just a couple little things here and there that they want to make sure both refs are involved. I don't think it's been a success when we talk about this. There have been some questionable calls. There have been some questionable missed calls. And that brings us to the Canada game as well. And now, again, I want to make sure that this is very clear. I'm not saying that this had any real impact on the game itself, but there were some pretty bad missed calls both ways. The big one that a lot of people are seeing on social media is that the Czechia, I know, gotta get that right. Czechia had more than 5 players on the ice on the Andre Palat goal. And, I mean, at one point there is 8, but there was a line change, so 2 of them were going off, and they would not have been involved in play, and that would have never resulted in a too many men penalty, except for the fact that there were 6 players on the ice that were actually part of the play. And you can watch the video. I don't have it, and not to mention IOC does a really good job of blocking video playback. So I'm not going to be able to play it, but go back, take a look. There are 6 players in the defensive zone on the block, and then Palat goes and scores, and there are still 6 players on the ice because there are 6 players in the celebration huddle afterwards. That's a huge problem. Had that been the goal that knocked Canada out, had that been the game-winning goal, heads would have rolled. Canada would have been beside themselves on that. Now, there was also some questionable non-calls on stick infractions. There was a slight hook on a potential breakaway by Martin Necas. I don't think it ended up changing anything because he still got the breakaway, and it was a great save by Binnington. But I do think that there's been issues, and a ton of issues resulting from refereeing is a major problem. To the point that the Czechia coach post-game, after a very good game from his team, 4-3 loss to Canada in the quarterfinals, he had some choice words for how the game was refed. and it actually looked like this. So he had this to say, and let's change the order of that here. The referees really worry me. What they're allowing against us is unacceptable. After every game, we send them 2 or 3 clips where they confirm that the opponent should have been penalized. I don't understand it. I just don't get it. I feel like everyone is afraid to call anything against Canada. We were basically playing against 6 players. Remember the fact that I said that they had 6 players on the ice when they scored? Just saying. Pot, meet kettle. Anyways, I don't want to make excuses, and no one has to agree with me, but the video backs me up. In this respect, it is not a fair tournament. It was happening to us even against Denmark. The mix of NHL and European referees hasn't worked. Everyone calls the game differently. Now, again, I kind of agree with him on that last part. The NHL mixed with European refs, it really hasn't worked. I know what the Olympics was trying to do, and I understand where they were thinking this could work, but it hasn't, and it's been a problem. And we're now getting into the meat and potatoes of the tournament. We're getting into the big stuff. The semifinals, the finals are coming up, and we can even go onto the women's side. The final is tomorrow. I would hate to see one of these games decided by a egregious call or a egregious missed call. And it's a worry that you're always going to have to deal with when there is referees involved. But for the most part, refs do get it right a lot of the time. And we have video review and we have all that. But it's really not working, and I don't want that to be the overarching theme of this Olympic hockey tournament, men's and women's. I do not want to be sitting here next week, because the final for the men's is on Sunday, the final for the women's is tomorrow. I do not want to be sitting here next week talking about how a missed call or a egregious call decided one of these next 3 games, or 4 games if you count the bronze medal game, 5 games if you count the 2 bronze medal games, because, there's 2 of them, men's and women's. I do not want to see that. I want to see the players on the ice determine the game. And if there's penalties, call them. If there's not penalties, let them play. I have no problem with that. Let's get to that point, because I don't want to be sitting here talking about the referees making the decision. Let's get back to the game itself. As I said, Marner, overtime hero, and we now have our quarterfinals set, or our semifinals set, I should say, because 3 games today, 3 of them all went to overtime. Not just Canada. Canada is not the only team that struggled to get into the semifinals. In fact, the only semifinalist that did not need overtime was the first game of the day. And for those of you who woke up at 6:10 to watch Slovakia play Germany, 6:10 Eastern, good on you. I did not, nor was I planning to. But Slovakia handles Germany 6-2. They look very good. I like the way this Slovakian team plays. Do I think they're going to win? No. Would I be shocked if they win? No. Slavkovsky is playing like a beast. And let's be honest, when he's going, the confidence in that team is so sky high. So they play the semifinal coming up. I'm going to get to who they play in a bit. Well, it's on the screen. So they take on the U.S., who barely snuck by the Swedes in overtime. It was a late goal from the Swedes to tie it up, and then the Americans get a Quinn Hughes goal to win it in OT. That was a very tight match. You kind of expected that. The Swedes did not start this tournament off very well, and they needed a big showing against the U.S. They got it. They just didn't get enough, but it was a very good game. And then Canada is going to play Finland, who had to go to overtime against the Swiss, who were up 2-0 late in the game. We're talking very late in the game. Less than 7 minutes left. The Finns finally scored. The Swiss scored 2 goals in just over a minute, about 14 minutes into the first period. And then there was no scoring until 6:06 left to go in the game. And the Finns got 2. Miro Heiskanen gets the game tire with just over a minute left. And Lehkonen gets the game winner to send the Finns into the semis against Canada. These are some very interesting matchups. Canada-Finland will be good. UC Saros, good goaltender. Very good goaltender. He's going to get challenged. He's going to get pushed by this Canadian team. A Canadian team that knows how to score. Lead the team in goals. Or lead the tournament in goals right now. And then Slovakia, U.S. U.S., again, they got pushed today by Sweden. And Slovakia has played Sweden and Finland, 2 very, very good teams. Beaten 1, lost to 1. I would not be shocked if both of these games go to overtime. I would also not be shocked if Canada and U.S. walks out with multi-goal wins. They are, I believe, the 2 best teams in this tournament. I went into the tournament believing that they were the 2 best teams. And I'm going to stick by that. But I would not be shocked if Slovakia or Finland can upset Canada or the U.S. in the semifinals, because I don't think Canada and U.S. are heads and tails better than everyone, like in the women's side of the tournament, which I think is fair. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't think that I'm saying anything that is going to catch people off guard either. I believe that is the case, and I do believe that I do think Canada will get through. I'm not going to say that I don't believe that, but I also do think that this could be a tight game, and they're going to need everybody to step up. Let's flip the script. Let's go from the men's side. Let's go to the women's side, who Canada's in. They're in the final, but it was tight against the Swiss. It took Captain Clutch, Marie-Philippe Poulin, coming back from injury, playing her heart out, and scoring both goals for Canada in what was a tight game, no doubt about it. She is the heartbeat of that team. There's no doubt. And when she was out, they did not look great. But they also haven't looked very good this year, and even at the end of last year as a whole. And now they play the Americans in the final, who have looked dominant. And I don't know the best way to say this, because they've looked incredible, the Americans. And I think if we go down to it and we talk about stats, and you look at the stats alone, the Americans have scored 31 goals in 6 games. We're talking more than 5 goals a game. That is dominant. Dominant. They do not score less than 5 goals a game. They have 5 shutouts in 6 games. They've given up 1 goal. 1. On the flip side, Canada has 21 goals for and 8 against. This is a team that was supposed to be built on veteran presence and solid defensive structure. And when we played the Americans in the round robin, it was disappointing. It was. It was disappointing. We lost 5-0 to our rivals. We have lost, I think it's 7 or 8 straight games against the Americans. They are rightfully overwhelming favorites in the final. And I don't know if Canada has enough to compete with this version and this style that the Americans play. They are so good. They are so strong. Every aspect of the game, they are so good. They get in on the forecheck. They force you to turn the puck over. They force you to take penalties. Abby Murphy is a menace on the ice. Menace. She gets under your skin. Does she maybe go a little bit too far? Yeah, I would say that game that they had, I think it was against Sweden. Let me just confirm that. Yeah, against Sweden. She kind of ran the goalie behind the net. I'm not a huge fan of that. That's going too far. That's a step too far. But everything up to that point, she's just getting under your skin. She's forcing you to think about her and forget about thinking about the play. Forget about what's happening in front of you. She wants you to pay attention to her, and that's it. And when she does that, when she is at her best, she gets the entire team off her game. And that's what happened in the preliminary round. Canada lost, and she had a big reason for that. And again, yes, people can point to MPP not being there. And yeah, she wasn't. I get that. You're not wrong. But that's also 5-goal difference is not because of a single player. 5-goal difference is because of a much better team. Listen, Marie-Philippe Poulin could have been out, and Canada could have lost by 1, and we could say, yeah, maybe if she's in, it's a different game. 5 goals is a lot, and they're going to have to, they're going to have to play the smartest game they've ever played tomorrow in the final against the U.S. We're talking win every draw, simple outs of your own zone, hard in on the forecheck. Because, again, this is a bit of a tighter rink. Everyone knows that. Everyone has talked about the dimensions of the Cortina rink or the Milano-Cortina rink. And it is small. It is tight. The worst thing for a team is when you're going back into your own end to pick up the puck and a team is forechecking hard on a small rink. Because you just don't have the space. You don't have the time to get control and get set up and make plays happen. So, no. I'm not saying that the Americans are going to walk away with this one without the Canadians putting up a fight. They're going to put up a fight, but they're going to have to put up a damn big fight, and something that they haven't had over the last year playing against the Americans. They're going to have a miracle game, and I'm not using that as a reference to 1980 miracle by the American men's team. No, Canada's going to have their own fantastic performance to take out this American team because they are good, and man, are they ready to kind of take their place atop the women's hockey world. If you don't already think they are, of course. Now, this is just part of the big Olympics, right? Let's not forget that, folks. We still have an entire other Olympics going on outside of hockey. And, of course, I was focused on hockey because, I'm in Canada. I'm in Toronto. We focus on the Canadian hockey teams. But Canada as a whole is also competing in other sports. And there's been some entertainment. Hello, curling. Welcome to the conversation of chaos. Canada currently sits 11th in the medal count, 10th technically if you go off total medals and not gold being more important. You know what I mean? 4 gold, 4 silver, 6 bronze. Our big story is coming out of speed skating, and more specifically short track speed skating. They've been doing a fantastic job. Sorel, 3 medals for Canada. We picked up a gold today. Desnoyers. But it also has been a bit disappointing because I expected Canada to be doing better in this Olympics, and we just haven't seen it. We haven't seen it yet, and there still is so many medals to be won. I mean, we mentioned the curling. There's 2 chances there. Canada is still in both of those competitions, and a bunch of skiing and snowboarding events as well, and still some speed skating stuff going on. So there is a lot more potential for medals, but it seems like we aren't medaling at the same rate. And to put it into perspective, we had our highest gold medal count ever at the Vancouver Olympics in 2010. Since then, it has been slowly declining, and we are at the point where we have 4 gold medals 2 weeks into this thing. I do think there's going to be more, and obviously I do have high hopes for Canadian men's hockey, and the women have already secured at least a silver, potentially a gold tomorrow. It'll be interesting to see what the final medal count is for Canada, for sure. There's no doubt about it. We'll get to that in a couple weeks when the Olympics are done. I will be interested to see where they end up because I do think that we have left some on the table. And I do believe that Canada could have had more if a couple things broke their way. And we could talk about, Mark McMorris. Guy gets hurt not even right before his practice run for Big Air. He gets hurt. Potential concussion. He misses that one. And then he gets into the slopestyle final for his other event that he is in, and he finishes 8th. Now, this is a guy that was an Olympic medal hopeful. Not a guarantee, but a very likely medal candidate, walking away with 0. And I don't put that on him. Injuries happen, right? And he got hurt. That was not pretty, and I'm very happy that he is okay. But that just kind of puts it into perspective of where we are with the medals right now. Like, we're missing out on some of these medals that I kind of think we were expecting to get. So I am interested to see where everything ends up. And we will have that conversation in, a week's time. By this time next week, we will be having the conversation of, did Canada do enough at the Olympics? And if not, how do we get there? How do we get to that point where it is enough? All right, let's switch gears now. We're going to head into the association because NBA All-Star Weekend happened over the weekend. NBA All-Star Weekend happened over the weekend. That's poor wording. My apologies. But new format takes place. The skills competition goes down. And we'll get into that in a second. But let's talk about the new format. 2 U.S. teams, 1 world team. Each get 2 games, and the final 2 get a 3rd game. And Victor Wembanyama, before the All-Star Weekend, said he was going to bring the intensity and force players to play around him. Well, for the first 3 games, he was right. And the intensity was there. We actually saw defense being played. It was entertaining. The final, not so much. But let's go positive first. U.S. Stars defeat the U.S. Stripes in the final. So the Stars were the young guns. quote unquote. And the stripes were the quote unquote old heads with LeBron and Kawhi and all those guys. But it was Scotty Barnes and, of course, MVP Anthony Edwards who lead the Stars to a All-Star Weekend win. They beat the World team, they beat the Stripes, and then they beat the Stripes again. So, was this format a success? This is the big conversation that's been happening since Sunday. And I want to say that it was a success, but only a mild success. Because there's a lot to be said about how this tournament finished. If we focus on the first 3 games, there was a lot of entertainment. Wemby looked awesome. Scotty Barnes, buzzer beater in the first game against the World team, was fantastic. Kawhi Leonard put up 31 points in the Stripes' first game. And then we get to the final. And the Stripes had played 2 straight games at this point. And they're taking on the U.S. Stars, who had a break between the second game, because they treated it as one big, long basketball game. 12-minute games equals the 12-minute quarters that we normally see. So the World played the Stars in the first game. Stars played the Stripes in the second game. Stripes played the World in the third game. And whoever had the most wins moved on to the final. Stripes played the Stars in the final after playing 2 straight games. And it showed. The Stars came out, they shot the lights out, and went up big and never gave it up. Won by more than 20 points. It was disappointing because there was a little bit of positivity, finally, about an all-star game in the NBA where defense was played. It's so sad that that is the benchmark of what we're looking for, but that's where we're at. And I think the format can be very successful, and I think it was successful to a degree, but there is a lot that needs to be said about the fact that the Stars or the Stripes team had nothing left for the final because they had played 2 straight. And I know it was the old guard and the old heads for the Stripes. I don't know if that's enough to say straight up that would have been the answer. So, is the format a potential success? Yes. And could there be growth to figure out how to make sure that both teams in the finals are ready to go? Absolutely. It was just a disappointing end to what was rather successful as a whole. Let's move on to the skills comp, which, listen, the 3-point contest, Dame, congratulations, welcome back. Guy hasn't stepped on a floor in the NBA and comes out and wins the 3-point competition. Cool. Awesome. The dunk contest might have been the worst dunk contest of all time. All time. We are talking all-time worst dunk contest. Do you know how sad that is? That in 2026, we are having an all-time poor dunk contest. And the problem is that I have no idea how you fix it. It has been so bad for so many years now. We go back to Gordon versus Levine dunk contest was incredible. And we will never get there again. The big names do not want to participate. Gone are the days where Michael Jordan or Vince Carter or Dwight Howard or Aaron Gordon even are competing in this. Do you want to know how many names in the dunk contest I knew going in? And I know I'm not a diehard NBA player. Or fan, I should say. I'm not. I'm aware of that. But I'm usually pretty good at knowing players. Usually. I knew one player participating in the dunk contest going into the weekend. Yes, I now know the names of all four. I couldn't tell you what the other three are doing. I know Jackson Hayes. Couldn't tell you where Kashad Johnson, Chase Richardson, and Carter Bryant are on the rotation for their own teams. Not a clue. But man, this was disappointing. And I don't have a good fix for how to make this better. I don't, because I don't think there is. Players don't want to participate because some of the greatest dunks of all time have already been done. And to try to top what we've already seen is so tough. Even like street ball dunk contests are better than what we saw on the weekend. So maybe that's what you do. Maybe you get rid of the NBA players dunking and you have street ball dunk contests. Because what we're seeing just isn't good enough. I will say I love seeing the Shooting Stars competition back. That was a lot of fun. The teams were very entertaining to see. The Harper dad and two sons was really cool. The Knicks group was fun. I loved it. That's a kind of competition that we can enjoy. I wish Scotty Barnes could get a pass, but hey, you know what? We'll move on from that. And we'll move on because the MLBPA has some issues coming up. And this is going to be a major talking point pretty much all season because MLBPA Executive Director Tony Clark has resigned. And this came out today. So if you didn't know, now you know. He has resigned amid investigations into a number of things. One of them being an inappropriate relationship with his sister-in-law, who also worked for the Players Association back in 2023. The union was also under investigation with Clark since last summer to, and I quote, purported improprieties regarding the usage of licensing money. Specifically, Clark has previously been alleged to have given himself equity in One Team Partners, a joint venture between the MLBPA and NFLPA, and failed to have sufficiently disclosed the level of resources being dedicated to Players Way, an MLBPA-owned youth baseball initiative that is under federal investigation. The internal probe reportedly uncovered messages between Clark and his sister-in-law, which led to the inappropriate relationship allegations, which led the union to seek his resignation. By the way, he was supposed to start his meetings with all of the MLB teams today. Today! He was supposed to meet with Cleveland. Well, that got canceled. And then he resigned. Now, would this be a massive story in and of itself? Absolutely. Is it even bigger? Because on the scale right now, the MLBPA is not exactly in a good spot at the moment because they are about to be in CBA negotiations. So the question becomes, where does this leave the MLBPA ahead of those negotiations? And there's already a pretty good idea of who's probably going to be taking over for Tony Clark. Deputy Director Bruce Myers is the most likely choice. And of course, the union met today amid everything, and they didn't vote anybody in. Chris Bassett, a member of the 8-player executive subcommittee for the MLBPA, told The Athletic that the committee didn't want to rush and wanted to take time to update every single member of the union. They're guessing it'll be wrapped up in about 24 hours with a vote, but it's going to be a bit of an interesting scenario over the next year because the CBA ends after this season. There has been widespread speculation that next year is going to, at the very least, start with a lockout because of a salary cap conversation between the MLBPA and MLB. And yeah, I would probably say, if I'm betting on this, about 90% there is going to be a lockout to start next season because the spending in the MLB is crazy. We're seeing teams spend $300 million. Shohei Ohtani's contract is more than that. And, oh yeah, the Dodgers keep spending, and the Yankees keep spending, and the Jays keep spending even. Red Sox as well. There are some teams whose entire payroll is less than Shohei Ohtani's single season contract if you do an average annual. It has created a separation between the haves and the reported have-nots, or purported have-nots, in the MLB. And that's a huge problem because we're not seeing competitive games all 162. And yes, you can have the argument that you're not going to get competitive games in a 162 game schedule every single game. And that might be true. But I also think that we can get competitive teams regardless of whether the game itself is competitive. And right now, that's just not the case. You have teams like the Athletics, the Rockies, the Marlins, the Rays, who just don't spend. And yeah, maybe you could take the Rays out of that because they're usually pretty good at drafting and building up prospects and getting them to the MLB and having a couple good seasons before they trade them because they don't want to spend money on keeping them. So because of this, fans and MLB executives would like to get a salary cap going because if I'm one of those smaller teams, smaller markets, I can't compete with the Dodgers when it comes to money. So I know that the free agents aren't going to be choosing us, even if I give them the world outside of the dollar value. So they're going to fight for a salary cap and a salary floor, for that matter, to force these teams to at least get to a relative competitive window. And now the MLBPA's lead executive resigns before the season leading into CBA negotiations. It's not ideal if you're the players who do not want a salary cap, and rightfully so. You're going to get the money. Why would you want a cap? You would want as much available to you as possible. And by putting a cap, obviously, you're putting a cap on the spending. So it'll be interesting to see how they can regroup, reset ahead of this upcoming year. Because I don't know if there's a good answer. And I don't know if they're going to be able to kind of hide the fact that this is an issue. Because it is. And it's not ideal timing to have this all come out. So, we shall see. That'll do it for me, folks. 50 minutes of talking is probably all you need to hear from me. So we will move on to next week. Make sure you tune in next Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern. We will be back. Hopefully, I will have the rest of my crew, or at least some member of the crew, joining me. But you can check us out on social media at Garage Door Sports or at Garage Door Sport, depending on what social media you're on. Don't forget to like and subscribe this episode right here. And let's make sure you tune in next week, 7 p.m. Eastern. Until next time, I'm Nick McVicker. Thank you for listening. We'll see you then.